Recently, I was listening to the lecture about the death. I just turned on my regular podcast and that was the topic. And the lecture discussed was especially from the perspective how we can cope with death from the atheistic perspective. We know that this mechanistic view of life, which means that there is only matter and whatever is the consciousness or anything organic is only the outcome of different connection of molecules or atoms. We know that this perspective can bring the lack of the intrinsic meaning and direction and therefore can lead people to depression or anxiety, things like that. We will discuss about this specific part in the another video, but this is one part of this mechanistic approach. On the other hand, if there is nothing spiritual, if there is no spirituality also outside of the subject, then there is no point in deceiving ourselves. So we will try to combine these two worldview and with the help of astrology, we will ask the questions how we can get the better view using this Vedic perspective. Also, we know that there is this Pascal's wager, very famous in the philosophy, from the Blaise Pascal. In fact, that was my first philosopher who brought me into that whole rabbit hole. The whole thing is that if there exists the God or the spiritual thing, the spiritual level of being, the spiritual consciousness, and we are not taking this part in our living into account, then we can lose everything according to him. So there are high stakes here, a lot to lose. And the Bhagavad Gita is mentioning that there are 4 types of people who are coming to spiritual life. There is this person who is suffering, one who wants to get wealth for some benefit. There is the Jnani, the one who wants to get the real knowledge, want to know the truth, and also Jigyasu, one who is just curious. But there is no mentioning of the category of the fear of death, like here on this Blaise Pascal wager, that we can lose everything. So it's better to be on that safer side. Today we will discuss what does the mechanistic theory to do with this entirety of subject life, how this is impacting the whole thing of the death, and what has replaced the paradise of the religion. And in the next episode we'll be talking how the science took the full circle coming back to mysticism and what the scientists, the big ones, are thinking about this. I don't know from where this interest of that is coming from. I think this is in my chart from the moon in the 8th house. You know that the moon is the mind and the 8th house is about the transformation, especially in the natural zodiac. It is the natural sign of Scorpio, and which is loaded by Ketu. And this Ketu, this southern node of the moon, is especially about transcending something. It's like reaching a little bit too far. You picked a little bit too far and now you cannot live in that bubble of illusion. The glimpse beyond the veil is leading to spirituality because you need to integrate this experience with the rest of your existence. I'm particularly interested in that topic of eternal nothingness. Like we had this Greek philosopher Lucretius who was continuing the philosophy of Epicurus. They were talking that the whole world is just built from atoms, and after that there is end of consciousness, and that's it. There is this eternal nothingness. Maybe these topics of this interest about the eternity and things like that are also trying to lose up those tensions which are coming with these very serious topics. This mechanistic approach is definitely related to Rahu because of 3 things. Rahu is all about the research, so it's taking all the important data, it's restricting everything just to numbers and just to material, observable facts, and just excluding everything organic, which is not important from that context of the specific study. And Rahu also is reducing everything to the names and categories, therefore it is ruling also the abstract knowledge, philosophy, things like that. And the third argument is that this is representing the Dhatu, which is the non-living object. And the contrary to that, we have a Jupiter. And among the objects, Jupiter is showing human beings, Mercury is showing the animals, Sun and Venus the plants, and the rest, which are the malefics, they are representing this non-living beings like the metal and things like that. It's funny to call this dead matter as if it was previously living. Maybe except the gas and the oil, because these are coming from the life. I talked with one person who is dealing with psychotherapy about this topic of how we are dealing with this dreadful experience of death. And one take on this is coming from atheists, and the other from people who are believing in some form of a metaphysical life. And from the point of the internal life, from the point of the subject observer, the perspective that there will be end to all of this, and that of course the external mother will be still living, but these observers, they are dying. Their participation in that whole life will disappear, is quite also frightening, but also is not really convincing me. So there is this way to cope with death for this atheistic perspective, this theory of waves, that you are bringing something to that whole, right? Whatever it's be. But then it means that this subjective experience is like a servant of that external thing. And we are talking here about either the mother, because then it means that I am bringing something to my country, or I'm bringing something to nature or to some cause. So it's either some material projects or things, or it could be some abstracts like country or some categories. In this way, we see that the subjective experience, which is the philosophy, the art, the love, everything we are going through, the whole, our very rich experience, in this perspective, from this mechanistic point of view, is the servant to something bigger, but the bigger as an abstract or as a mother, right? So the subjective life experience is servant, or it's subjective to this mother, we could say, which also brings many conflicts here. Even if we say, yeah, but you will bring something to the new generations, but also these new generations will disappear, right? And so they are like giving effort to the just another generation, they will also disappear. So the subjective thing is not continued. We could say that it's all done. This whole subjective experience is sacrificed for some mother, right? Or some abstract phenomena. What is sacrificed is the subjective life. And that is the question. Can the subjective life be sacrificed? Or maybe it's the center and the essence. So that is the other point of view. And also the other problematic is in the theory of waves is that they say that you are providing something good. But from the bigger perspective, we don't know really first if we will have any tangible impact, because I think that many people are not bringing any major revolution to society. Of course, this theory of waves is saying that, yeah, even the small thing is bringing some change and things like that. And the second thing is, even if you have some impact, can you say it was really positive? Can you say that it was really good? Because many people were thinking that they are doing something good, but from the perspective of decades or hundreds of years, it turned out that it was a mistake or it was bad. But even if you take this, in that way of thinking, we are sacrificing the essence, the life, the consciousness to the bigger abstract concepts or to the mother, which may be hard to accept for some people. And therefore, the Matthias Dasmet, in the book The Psychology of Totalitarianism, he said, man may not realize it, but his humanity doesn't really matter. It is nothing essential. His whole existence, his longing and his lust, his romantic lamentation and his most superficial needs, his joy and his sorrow, his doubts, his choices, his anger and unreasonableness, his pleasure and his suffering, deepest aversion and most lofty aesthetic appreciations, in short, the entire drama of his existence can ultimately be reduced to elementary particles that interact according to the laws of mechanics. So it's like the whole life and organic is really coming from the mother, and therefore, because it's coming, this is the origin, it is also the servant of the mother. And further, he writes, it is also through this art that we as human beings, and more broadly as a culture and society, can relate differently to death. Within a mechanistic and biological reductionist view of man, suffering, decay and death can only be meaningless. They cannot be seen as something that has something to say and teach us as human beings. This is perhaps the biggest problem with the great mechanistic narrative. The ultimate master of the sublunary death has not been given an acceptable pardon it, and he doesn't like that. Bent from the story, he terrifies us and creates frantic responses to every threat, whether terrorism or viruses that end up being more damaging than the problem itself. It is not so much through the belief of that new great narrative that our culture will be able to give death a new place, but by cultivating the art of integral speaking and generating contact with the object. Within that mechanistic narrative, there is no place for death, or at least no acceptable place. It's also very hard to integrate this. There are many theories and many things to cope with it, but also we see how many peoples are going back to some religion or spirituality at the end of their life. Seemingly, these theories are not enough, right? And someone can say, yeah, they are ways to make this whole process easier, and this is like a psychological coping mechanism. But if this psychological coping mechanism is so important, maybe within that whole narrative of life there is some place for spirituality if we are longing for it so much at this very important existential life crisis like death. So again, this is very important, and this two perspectives, these two worldviews are on completely peripheral places, because in that mechanistic way of seeing the world, we are starting from the mother and consciousness is originating from it, whilst within that, for example, from the Hindu philosophy, we will also be supported by many high-level heads of sciences. We'll be talking that in the next video. We are starting from, we can call it idea, like Heisenberg, or we can call it the great mind, like Planck was calling it, or we can call it consciousness as the basis. Because if we start from the consciousness, that whole idea of eternal nothingness and that deep, rich, subjective experience will end is not making a lot of sense. Therefore, many people who are coming from that consciousness-friendly sciences like psychology, they are more into religion, they are more into astrology, they are more into those knowledge branches. We are accepting some form or which have some intuition that there could be some openness, there could be something else than the mother. There is some space between those atoms for something organic. So we will be talking about that more in the next video, but I hope this is making a good inspiration for thought. Okay guys, so that's gonna be it for today. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about that? Is that subjective experience going to end? And that's fine, maybe that's fine, maybe it's okay, maybe this whole spiritual or metaphysical crying is only we are meek and weak and we cannot accept this. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about it? And thanks for watching till the end and being here on this channel. If you find some value in this video, please don't forget to hit a thumbs up, subscribe for more, join our Discord community, and if you want to see more, please consider watching this one.